The massive hall buzzed with noise as creatures from across the galaxy filled every seat. Some looked like giant insects with shiny wings. Others were made of what seemed like living gas floating in special suits. A few looked like walking crystals that sparkled under the bright lights. There were hundreds of different alien species, and they all had one thing in common today. They were here to watch Earth make a fool of itself. Admiral Jake Morrison walked slowly toward the center of the huge room. His dark blue uniform looked plain and simple compared to the fancy clothes and natural armor of the aliens around him. Behind him, Commander Lisa Wells carried a small device that would show Earth's military plans to everyone in the hall. Her hands were steady, but her jaw was tight with anger at the sounds coming from the crowd. The aliens were not trying to hide their amusement. The bug-like Velkari clicked their sharp mouthparts in what passed for laughter among their kind. The gas creatures called Nephilim changed colors in their suits, shifting to shades that meant they found something funny. Even the stone-like architects, who usually showed no emotion at all, had patterns of light dancing across their crystal bodies. Earth had only been part of the Galactic Federation for 5 years. That made humans the newest and weakest members of this huge alliance of worlds. Every other species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. They had weapons that could destroy planets and ships that could cross the galaxy in days. Earth still used rockets that burned fuel to get to space, and their biggest ships could barely make it to the next star system. But now there was a war coming. The Zirathi Empire was attacking worlds on the edge of Federation space, and every member had to show what they could do to help defend against this threat. It was Earth's turn to present their defense plan to the Galactic Court. Morrison reached a speaking platform in the center of the hall. The noise died down as alien translators prepared to turn his words into hundreds of different languages. He looked up at the thousands of creatures staring down at him and began to speak. "Honored representatives of the Galactic Federation," Morrison said, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's advanced sound system. "Earth presents our defensive strategy. We call it Operation Thunderstrike." Wells activated the holographic display, and images began floating in the air above the platform. The first pictures showed Earth's space fleet, 12 ships that looked crude and bulky compared to the sleek vessels other species used. The humans had attached rockets and nuclear weapons to metal frames, creating spacecraft that moved slowly and looked like they might fall apart at any moment. A sound like breaking glass came from the hegemony section. Ambassador Zekthul, whose people had been flying between stars since before humans learned to make fire, was laughing so hard his translator was having trouble keeping up. When he finally managed to speak, his words came out in a tone of complete disbelief. "These new creatures want to fight in space with chemical explosives and metal tubes?" Zekthal said, his voice getting louder with each word. "Do they plan to throw rocks at enemy ships next?" More laughter filled the hall. The display showed human soldiers jumping out of flying machines, underwater boats shooting torpedoes, and small aircraft fighting in the sky around Earth. To species that had energy shields and weapons made of pure light, it looked like watching children play with toys. General Crix from the Valdorian military spoke up next. His people were famous throughout the galaxy for their plasma cannons and force fields that could stop any attack. Their largest ship appears to be barely capable of reaching another planet, he said, his electronic voice translator making his words sound even more dismissive. How do they expect to fight Zirathi war vessels that are several miles long? Morrison continued with his presentation, acting as if he could not hear the laughter and comments from the crowd. "Our strategy uses unconventional tactics and adaptive logistics," he explained. "We have trained special units to fight in many different types of environments and situations." The images changed to show human soldiers in training. They were crawling through mud, climbing mountains, swimming in freezing water, and fighting in destroyed cities. The footage showed them using simple weapons, working together in small groups, and surviving in places where most other species would need special equipment just to stay alive. The laughter got even louder. The fish-like Murphy delegation made bubbling sounds that their translator announced as expressions of great amusement. Several groups of aliens were already getting up to leave, clearly thinking this was a waste of their time. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Parker, who was part of Earth's military team, leaned close to Wells and whispered, "They think this is some kind of joke." Wells whispered back without moving her lips, "Can you blame them? If we saw a species trying to fight plasma cannons with gunpowder, we would laugh too." Morrison showed more footage of human training exercises. Soldiers practiced fighting in hot deserts, cold mountains, thick jungles, and ruined cities. They learned to use whatever they could find as weapons and to survive without any advanced technology. The presentation showed humans working together to solve problems that would stop other species completely. We believe these capabilities, combined with our ability to adapt quickly to new situations, can help the Federation defend against the Zirathi threat, Morrison concluded. The hall erupted in what could only be called polite clapping, but it was clear that nobody was taking Earth's presentation seriously. Many of the alien delegations were already filing out of their seats, talking among themselves about how primitive and useless the human military appeared to be. High Chancellor Morden, the supreme commander of all Federation forces, looked down at Morrison from his raised platform. Mordu and his species had conquered dozens of star systems and commanded fleets of ships that could destroy entire worlds. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who had never lost a battle. "Admiral Morrison," Morden said, "we appreciate your enthusiasm. However, we believe Earth's forces would be most useful in supporting roles, perhaps helping to move supplies or evacuate civilians from danger zones. We think it would be best to leave the actual fighting to species that have appropriate technology and experience." As the human delegation gathered their equipment and prepared to leave, the whispers and alien laughter followed them out of the hall. Some of the comments were translated by their devices, and the words stung worse than the laughter. "Did you see those primitive rockets? They still burn chemicals for fuel. Their weapons shoot pieces of metal. How do they expect to damage energy? Shields with lumps of iron? 5 years in the Federation, and they still fight like animals. At least they can carry messages between the real military units." Morrison, Wells, and Parker walked through the corridors of the massive space station. That served as Federation headquarters. Alien species of every description moved around them, but none bothered to acknowledge the humans. Earth had officially been dismissed as irrelevant before the war had even begun. "Well, that went about as expected," Parker said once they were alone in their transport ship heading back to Earth. Wells stared out the window at the stars. "They have no idea what humans are really capable of," she said quietly. Morrison was already thinking about the real plans waiting back on Earth, the ones they had not shown to the Galactic Court. "Let them laugh," he said. "They will change their tune soon enough." The transport ship turned toward the small yellow star that marked humanity's home, carrying with it the galaxy's newest and most underestimated military force. Behind them, the aliens continued their preparations for a war they were certain they understood. None of them had ever fought humans before. That was about to change. 3 months passed after the meeting at the Galactic Court. During that time, the people of Earth heard troubling news from across the galaxy. The Zirathi Empire had finally begun their attack, and it was worse than anyone had imagined. Captain Rick Hayes stood in the war room deep beneath the mountains of Colorado. The room was filled with screens showing maps of space, and almost all of them showed bad news. Red dots marked planets that had already fallen to the enemy. Yellow dots showed worlds under attack right now. The blue dots that meant Federation victories were so few that they were hard to find. The Sigma Draconis system is gone, reported Commander Amy Chun, who worked with Federation intelligence. Her voice was flat and tired from delivering bad news all morning. The hegemony sent their entire Third Fleet to defend it. The battle lasted 4 hours, and then everything went quiet. General Frank Weber, the highest-ranking military officer on Earth, looked at the tactical displays with growing worry. The hegemony had some of the most advanced ships in the galaxy, with weapons that could destroy moons and shields that had never been broken in 1,000 years of warfare. If they were losing battles in 4 hours, something was very wrong. What about the Valdorian Defense Fleet? Weber asked. They were supposed to be protecting the Kepler system. Those people have been fighting wars for longer than humans have existed. Chun checked her reports and shook her head. Destroyed completely at Kepler 442b. The survivors say the Zirathi ships did something impossible. They adapted to the Valdorian plasma weapons while the battle was still going on. Within minutes, their energy shields became useless and their weapons stopped working. The room fell quiet as everyone understood what this meant. The species that had laughed at Earth's primitive weapons were being wiped out by an enemy that could somehow change itself during battle. The most advanced military forces in the galaxy were being defeated by creatures they had never seen before. Major Pete Collins, who studied alien life forms for the Earth military, brought up reports from the few survivors who had escaped the attacks. According to the people who got away, the Zirathi are not just conquering these worlds. They are eating them. Their ships are alive somehow, and they consume entire planets to make themselves bigger and stronger. Weber turned to Hayes, who was in charge of Earth's small space fleet. What is the status of Federation command? Hayes looked at his communication logs and frowned. Complete chaos. Half of the High Council has run away to safe areas deep in Federation space. Chancellor Mordoon is telling everyone to retreat to the core worlds and abandon the outer systems. As if summoned by their conversation, the main communication screen activated with an incoming transmission. The image showed a creature Hayes recognized as one of the Velkari, the insect-like species that had been so amused by Earth's presentation months earlier. But this Velkari looked nothing like the proud, shining creatures they had seen in the Galactic court. Admiral Tikhar's crystal wings were cracked and dull. His compound eyes showed an emotion that Hayes had never seen in a Velkari before. Pure terror. When he spoke, his voice came through the translator as barely more than a whisper. "This is Admiral Tsar of the Federation 12th Fleet," the alien said. "We are requesting immediate assistance at Centauri Proxima. Our forces are being systematically eliminated. The Zirathi ships are unlike anything in our military databases." Admiral Morrison, who had returned to Earth after the humiliating presentation, leaned forward toward the communication screen. "What is your tactical assessment, Admiral? What makes these enemies so different?" "They do not fight like any military force we have ever encountered," Sekar replied, his antenna twitching with fear. "They swarm like insects, but they learn from every battle. They adapt to our weapons and tactics faster than we can change them. Our computer-guided targeting systems become worthless within hours because they develop countermeasures." Weber exchanged looks with his staff. This was exactly what they had feared when they first heard about the Zirathi. "Admiral Zekar, what about the other Federation species? Are any of them having better results?" The Velkari commander's response was barely audible. The architects sent their largest crystal ships to stop them. The Zirathi dissolved them with some kind of living acid. The Murthai tried to hide their underwater cities, but the enemy drained entire oceans. Every technological advantage we possess, they neutralize and then use against us. After the transmission ended, The Earth Command staff sat without speaking for several minutes. The same alien species who had dismissed humanity's military as primitive toys were being crushed by an enemy that seemed designed specifically to. Counter-Advanced Technology. Collins pulled up classified files on his computer workstation. For months, Earth scientists had been studying every piece of information they could gather about the Zirathi threat. What they had discovered was terrifying, but also gave them hope. "Sir," Collins said to Weber, "I think it is time we put the Raven Protocol into action." The Raven Protocol was Earth's most secret military plan. While the other species of the galaxy had focused on building bigger ships and more powerful weapons, Earth had taken a completely different approach. They had studied the enemy and realized that the Zirathi were designed to fight exactly the kind of war the Federation wanted to fight. Weber nodded slowly. "Get me a secure communication line to the President. Tell her it is time to stop playing by galactic rules." Within hours, emergency meetings were taking place in every major capital on Earth. President Mary Johnson called together the leaders of every nation, and for the first time in human history, the entire planet united for a single purpose. In secret military bases around the world, soldiers began preparing for a kind of warfare that no alien species had ever seen. They trained with weapons that the galaxy considered obsolete, using tactics that were thousands of years old, but had been perfected through centuries of human conflict. The plan was simple but radical. While other species relied on computer-controlled ships and energy weapons, Earth would fight with manual systems and kinetic weapons. While the aliens used predictable formations and standardized tactics, humans would use chaos and creativity. Dr. Linda Foster, Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, explained the reasoning to the assembled military commanders. The Zirathi are a hive mind. They share information instantly across their entire species. This makes them incredibly effective against organized, technological enemies. But hive minds have a critical weakness. They cannot understand or predict individual creativity and random decision-making. Colonel Janet Price, who commanded Earth's new Space Marine Corps, studied the battle plans with excitement. "So while they are busy adapting to plasma cannons and energy shields, we hit them with good old-fashioned bullets and explosives." "Exactly," Weber confirmed. "The Federation species fight wars the way their computers tell them to fight. Every battle follows patterns that can be analyzed and countered. But humans have been fighting chaotic, unpredictable wars since the beginning of our species." The transformation of Earth's military happened with incredible speed. Factories that had been making civilian goods were converted to produce weapons and equipment designed specifically to confuse and overwhelm the Zirathi biotechnology. Ships were retrofitted with manual controls and analog systems that could not be hacked or analyzed by alien computers. Most importantly, human soldiers trained for something no other species in the galaxy had ever attempted: warfare without rules, patterns, or predictable tactics. Every unit would operate independently, making decisions based on human intuition rather than computer analysis. As reports continued to arrive, showing Federation defeats across the galaxy, Earth prepared to show the universe something it had never seen before. The species that had been dismissed as primitive were about to demonstrate why humans had survived every disaster their planet could throw at them. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the oldest solutions are the most effective ones. President Mary Johnson stood before the emergency session of Congress, her face serious but determined. Behind her, a massive screen showed the shrinking territory of the Galactic Federation. Red zones marked worlds that had fallen to the Zirathi, and there were far too many of them. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "the Galactic Federation faces complete destruction. 17 member worlds have been conquered in the past 2 weeks alone. The alien species that once dismissed our military capabilities are now facing extinction. Senator Bill Thompson from Texas leaned forward in his seat. Madam President, what exactly are you asking us to do? We have exactly 12 ships that can travel between stars, and the enemy has thousands of vessels. Johnson's response was firm and clear. We are not going to fight their kind of war. We are going to fight our kind of war. Deep beneath the Cheyenne Mountains, in the expanded NORAD facility that now served as Earth's Galactic Command Center, General Weber was briefing his top military commanders on Operation Switchblade. This was Earth's real response to the Zirathi threat, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Federation species made a critical mistake, Weber explained to the assembled officers. They relied completely on technological superiority. Every battle they fight follows predictable patterns controlled by computers. Their formations are standardized, their tactics are programmed, and their responses are calculated by machines. Colonel Janet Price, who now commanded Earth's newly formed Space Marine Corps, studied the tactical plans spread across the table. And the Zirathi evolved specifically to counter that kind of warfare. Exactly right, Baker continued. Captain Carl Davis, please report on our stealth ship program. Davis had been a submarine commander before the war began, spending years learning how to hunt enemies underwater without being detected. Now he applied those same skills to space warfare. He activated his presentation, showing images of Earth's modified spacecraft. We have completely retrofitted our vessels with technology the Federation considers ancient and useless, Davis explained. Manual flight controls, analog navigation systems, electromagnetic pulse shielding. If the Zirathi adapt by analyzing computer patterns and electronic systems, we will give them something they cannot analyze: human pilots making split-second decisions. The ships shown on the screen looked crude compared to Federation vessels, but that was exactly the point. Where alien ships had smooth curves and energy-based systems, Earth's vessels were angular, mechanical, and powered by chemical reactions. They looked like something from humanity's early space age, which was precisely what made them dangerous. Lieutenant Colonel Kate Sullivan, head of the new Orbital Drop Division, added her assessment. Our soldiers have trained for combat in every possible environment. While other species specialized in energy weapons and force fields, we learned to fight with whatever we could find. That flexibility is our greatest weapon. Sullivan's troops were unlike any military force in galactic history. They could fight in the vacuum of space, underwater, in poisonous atmospheres, or inside enemy ships. Most importantly, they could do all of this without relying on computer assistance or advanced technology. Major Tony Garcia, Earth's psychological warfare specialist, presented what might be the most important element of the entire plan. Intelligence reports confirm that the Zirathi operate as a hive mind. They share tactical knowledge instantly across their entire species. This makes them incredibly effective against organized enemies, but it also creates a critical vulnerability. Garcia explained that hive minds excelled at processing organized information and responding to predictable threats. They could analyze any computer-controlled system and develop countermeasures within hours. But they had never encountered enemies who made decisions based on individual creativity, personal experience, and pure human instinct. We are going to deploy small, independent units using guerrilla warfare tactics, Weber outlined. No communication between units that the enemy can intercept. No standardized equipment they can analyze. No computer-assisted coordination they can hack. Each team will operate with complete independence, making decisions the Zirathi biocomputers cannot model or predict. The plan was revolutionary by galactic standards, but based on warfare principles humans had used for thousands of years. Small groups of soldiers would infiltrate enemy territory, strike at unexpected targets, and disappear before the enemy could respond. It was the same strategy that had allowed human rebels to defeat superior forces throughout history. Admiral Morrison, who had returned from Federation space with detailed intelligence about Zerathi capabilities, delivered the final component of the briefing. The Federation Council has agreed to our proposal, though they clearly have serious doubts. They are desperate enough to try anything at this point. We will be inserted into active combat zones where their conventional forces have already failed. Morrison had spent weeks convincing alien commanders to give Earth a chance. The same species who had laughed at human military technology were now willing to try anything that might slow down the Zerathi advance. As the briefing concluded, Weber looked around the table at each of his commanders. These were men and women who had trained their entire lives for warfare, but they had never faced anything like the challenge ahead of them. They would be fighting an enemy that could adapt any conventional tactic, using weapons and strategies the galaxy considered primitive. The Federation laughed at our chemical rockets, our metal bullets, and our unpredictable tactics, Weber said. They are about to learn why humans spent thousands of years perfecting the art of survival through warfare. In the weeks that followed, Earth underwent the most rapid military transformation in human history. Factories that had been producing consumer goods were converted overnight to manufacture weapons specifically designed to confuse alien biotechnology. The weapons were simple by galactic standards: kinetic projectiles, chemical explosives, and incendiary devices that relied on basic physics rather than advanced energy manipulation. Training camps around the world prepared soldiers for a kind of combat no other species had ever attempted. They learned to fight without radio communication, navigate without computer assistance, and survive using only what they could carry or find. Most importantly, they learned to think independently and make tactical decisions without following any predetermined patterns. The psychological preparation was just as important as the physical training. Human soldiers were taught to embrace chaos and unpredictability rather than fear it, while alien military doctrine emphasized order and coordination. Earth's warriors learned to thrive in confusion and uncertainty. Dr. Linda Foster worked with military psychologists to understand exactly how the human mind could be used as a weapon against hive mind enemies. Individual human consciousness is completely unpredictable, she explained to the training instructors. We make decisions based on emotions, memories, personal experiences, and pure intuition. No computer, no matter how advanced, can model that kind of thinking. Meanwhile, intelligence officers studied every piece of available data about Zerathi behavior and capabilities. What they discovered confirmed their strategy. The enemy excelled at countering organized, technological warfare what had never encountered. Truly chaotic human tactics. Captain Sam Roberts, a former test pilot who now commanded one of Earth's modified attack vessels, summed up the human advantage during a final briefing session. They have been fighting computer-controlled enemies for who knows how long. Every decision their opponents make follows logical patterns, but human beings are not logical. We are creative, stubborn, and completely unpredictable. 3 days after, the final preparations were complete. The first human strike teams departed Earth aboard cargo vessels that had been disguised to look like standard Federation transport ships. Their destination was the front lines of the war, where the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had already suffered devastating defeats. As the ships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying Earth's warriors toward their first battle against the Zerathi, the people of Earth waited to see if their ancient approach to warfare could succeed where advanced technology had failed. The galaxy was about to discover what humans could accomplish when they stopped trying to fight like everyone else and started fighting like themselves. The Zerathi bioship, called Hunter Prime, drifted through the wreckage of what had once been the Valdorian home fleet. Pieces of destroyed alien vessels floated in space around it like a metal graveyard. The living ship's sensors scanned each piece of debris, adding information about Valdorian weapons and defenses to its vast memory banks. Hunter Prime was proud of its victories. In the past month, it had helped destroy fleets from 12 different species. Each battle had made the Zirathi collective mind smarter and stronger. Every weapon system the Federation used, every defensive strategy they tried, every formation they deployed had been studied, understood, and countered. Suddenly, alarms began sounding through Hunter Prime's bio-neural networks. 3 small objects were approaching, moving slowly through space. The bioship's sensors examined them carefully and found nothing threatening. These vessels were so primitive. They barely registered as military craft at all. The ships had no energy shields, no plasma weapons, and no advanced propulsion systems. They moved using simple chemical rockets that the Zirathi had encountered decades ago when conquering less advanced species. Hunter Prime's consciousness was puzzled. Why would anyone send such outdated technology into a battle zone? Captain Sam Roberts piloted the lead vessel, a ship called the Wolverine, using manual controls that looked like they belonged in a museum. Next to him, Lieutenant Kelly Murphy operated sensor equipment that used basic electromagnetic detection instead of the quantum scanners other species preferred. "I am picking up movement," Murphy reported, her voice calm despite the approaching danger. 12 bioships converging on our position. They are not firing yet. Roberts smiled, his hands steady on the flight controls. They are probably trying to figure out if we are actually dangerous. Maya, how does everything look back there? In the ship's cargo bay, which had been converted into a troop compartment, Sergeant Maya Rodriguez checked her equipment one last time. 20 soldiers sat in powered armor that combined ceramic plates with reactive camouflage systems. The armor did not use energy shields like other species, but it scattered the biological sensors the Zirathi relied on. Their weapons would have seemed laughable to any Federation officer. Instead of plasma rifles and energy cannons, the humans carried railguns that fired metal slugs, chemical explosive devices, and incendiary rounds that created intense heat through simple combustion. "Locked and loaded, sir," Rodriguez responded. "The Zirathi have never faced anything like what we are carrying." Hunter Prime finally decided to respond to the approaching vessels. It launched what appeared to be standard plasma attacks, the same energy bolts that had destroyed thousands of Federation ships. But Roberts threw the Wolverine into a diving maneuver that would have been impossible with computer-assisted navigation. The human pilot relied on reflexes developed through years of flying aircraft in Earth's atmosphere. He reacted to the incoming fire faster than any computer could calculate a response, throwing his ship through space in patterns that made no mathematical sense but kept him alive. "Return fire," Roberts commanded. The Wolverine's weapons were a combination of technologies that no sane military engineer would have put together. Railguns fired depleted uranium rounds at incredible speeds, followed by missiles guided not by sophisticated computers, but by human pilots, using manual targeting systems. Hunter Prime took 17 railgun rounds directly in its center mass. Instead of the expected plasma damage that it had evolved to resist, the kinetic impacts shattered its biometallic hull. The physical force of metal projectiles, moving at high speed, created damage the living ship had never experienced before. Chemical explosives detonated inside Hunter Prime's body, tearing apart organs that had been designed to resist energy weapons, but had no defense against simple combustion. The bioship's consciousness reeled in confusion and pain as shaped charges burned through its internal structure. "Boarding party, go," Roberts shouted into his communication system. Rodriguez led her team through a hole in Hunter Prime's hull that had been cut by thermal charges. The Zirathi bioship tried to heal the wound by growing new tissue, but human incendiary devices burned through the regenerating material faster then it could grow back. Inside the alien vessel, Rodriguez's team encountered the Zirathi face-to-face for the first time. The creatures were nightmarish combinations of organic tissue and integrated technology. They moved with perfect coordination, sharing tactical information instantly through their hive-mind connection. Against any other military force in the galaxy, this coordination would have been decisive. Against humans, it became a weakness instead of a strength. Rodriguez, left flank, shouted Private Nick Thompson, diving behind what appeared to be a living wall that pulsed with alien circulation systems. Instead of following standard military procedures, Rodriguez's team fought like they were clearing dangerous buildings back on Earth. They used explosives to create new pathways through the bioship's structure, employed smoke grenades that confused alien sensors, and moved with a kind of aggressive unpredictability that no hive mind could model or predict. The Zirathi had faced organized armies with computer-controlled tactics for generations. They were prepared for logical formations, predictable weapon patterns, and strategies that followed mathematical principles. They were not prepared for soldiers who changed their approach randomly, used improvised weapons, and made decisions based on pure instinct. Private Dana Parker threw a device that would have been considered primitive by any galactic military standard. It was a simple flashbang grenade that created light and sound frequencies the Zirathi had never encountered in combat. As the aliens' biosensors overloaded from the unexpected stimulus, the humans pressed their advantage with close-quarters fighting techniques. The Zirathi fell back through their own ship, their shared consciousness struggling to process combat. Methods that seemed to change every few seconds. Every time they adapted to one human tactic, the soldiers immediately switched to something completely different. Rodriguez used hand signals to communicate with her team, avoiding radio transmissions that the Zirathi might intercept. Her soldiers moved through the bioship like they were hunting in a jungle, using cover and concealment principles that had been developed over thousands of years of human warfare. Biocore located, Rodriguez reported, placing explosive charges around what appeared to be the ship's central nervous system. 30 seconds and this thing becomes space debris. As the human teams prepared to evacuate, Hunter Prime desperately tried to communicate with the rest of the Zirathi fleet. But the information it transmitted made no sense to the collective consciousness. The data described enemies who fought without recognizable patterns, weapons that relied on basic physics instead of energy manipulation, and most disturbing of all, warriors who seemed to become more effective as the situation became more chaotic. Hunter Prime's death scream echoed across Zirathi communication networks throughout the entire sector as the chemical explosives detonated simultaneously. The bioship's destruction sent a shockwave of confusion through the hive mind that no Zirathi had ever experienced before. For the first time since their species had begun conquering other worlds, the Zirathi collective consciousness felt something completely foreign to their nature: uncertainty. The data from Hunter Prime's final moments could not be processed or understood by minds that had evolved to handle only logical, predictable information. Across the sector, other Zirathi bioships began receiving similar reports. Human strike. Teams were appearing in multiple locations, using tactics that defied analysis. The aliens' attempts to adapt to human weapons failed because the humans kept changing their approach faster than the biotechnology could evolve. In the Wolverine's cockpit, Roberts received confirmation that all human teams had successfully extracted from the destroyed bioship. Around them, the remaining Zirathi vessels seemed confused and disorganized, their perfect coordination disrupted by encounters with an enemy they could not understand. Mission accomplished, Roberts reported to Earth Command. The enemy appears to be having difficulty processing our combat methods. The first battle between humans and Zirathi was over, and for the first time in the war, the advanced alien invaders had been completely defeated. 6 months after the first human engagement with the Zirathi, the war had changed completely. In the same Grand Assembly Hall, where Earth's delegates had once been mocked and dismissed, emergency sessions now focused on a single incredible question. How were the primitive humans achieving the impossible? Admiral Morrison stood at the same central podium where he had presented Earth's defense plan to laughter and ridicule. But the atmosphere in the hall was completely different now. The insect-like Velkari delegation leaned forward with desperate attention, hanging on every word. The Valdorians, what remained of their once proud military, looked at the human admiral with something close to worship. Even the gaseous Nephilim had stopped their color-shifting displays of amusement. Their containment suits showed steady, serious hues as they waited to hear how Earth had accomplished what no other Federation species had managed to do. Honored representatives, Morrison began, his voice carrying the same calm authority, had months earlier, but now the hall was completely silent. Human strike teams have engaged Zirathi forces in 47 separate combat operations across 12 different star systems. Morrison activated the tactical display, and the assembled aliens stared in amazement at what they saw. The map of Federation space still showed many red zones, where the Zirathi controlled conquered worlds, but scattered throughout were blue sectors that indicated successful human operations. More importantly, several areas now showed yellow markings that meant Zirathi forces were actually retreating. This was something that had never happened before in the entire war. Not once had the bioships withdrawn from any system they had attacked. We have achieved tactical victories in 39 of those 47 encounters, Morrison continued. Human casualties have been minimal, while Zirathi losses appear to be substantial. The silence in the hall was so complete that the sound of alien breathing apparatus could be heard clearly. Species that had fought the Zirathi for months without winning a single meaningful battle now faced the reality that the humans they had dismissed as primitive were systematically destroying enemy forces. Ambassador Zeke Thule of the Hegemony, whose own people had lost more than half their fleet to the Zirathi, spoke first. His voice carried none of the arrogance it had held during Earth's original presentation. Admiral Morrison, our military computers cannot understand your combat reports. Your forces appear to operate without any logical patterns that we can analyze. That is exactly correct, Morrison replied. The Zirathi are a hive mind species. They excel at predicting and countering organized, computer-controlled warfare. But they cannot predict or counter pure chaos. General Weber joined the presentation. Through quantum communication from Earth, his image appeared on screens throughout the hall, and every alien representative could see the confidence in his expression. Every human unit operates with complete independence. We use no shared computer networks, no standardized tactics, and no predictable response patterns. Each engagement is unique, because each human commander makes different decisions based on their own judgment. The main display showed combat footage from recent human operations. Alien representatives watched in fascination as human soldiers rappelled from damaged Zirathi bioships, used improvised explosives to collapse alien structures, and fought their way through environments that would have been impossible for computer-controlled. Systems to navigate. Captain Roberts, now promoted to Commodore for his successful missions, provided tactical analysis that left the alien audience stunned. The Zirathi evolved specifically to fight species like yours. Highly advanced, dependent on technology, and completely predictable in your responses. They have never encountered an enemy that relies on creativity and adaptability rather than superior firepower. Dr. Linda Foster, Earth's expert on alien psychology, explained the scientific basis for human success. The Zirathi hive mind shares information instantly across their entire species, but this creates a critical vulnerability. When they encounter tactics they cannot catalog analyze, or predict, it creates systematic confusion throughout their entire collective consciousness. The presentation concluded with the most stunning intelligence reports of the entire war. Major Garcia, now heading Combined Human Federation Intelligence Operations, delivered news that shocked every alien representative. In the hall, Zirathi forces are now actively avoiding star systems where human forces are known to be operating, Garcia announced. They have retreated from 7 previously occupied worlds rather than face human strike teams. Most significantly, we have detected evidence of internal conflict within their hive mind structure. The aquatic Murthai delegation, whose ocean homeworlds had been partially drained by Zirathi bioprocessors, spoke through their translator with obvious amazement. Are you saying that your chaotic fighting methods are literally driving them insane? Morrison nodded seriously. In simple terms, yes. A hive mind that has evolved to process perfect, organized information cannot handle truly random data. Human unpredictability and creativity represent a form of psychological warfare they have no defense against. High Chancellor Mordan, who had once dismissed Earth's military as suitable only for carrying supplies, now addressed Morrison with complete respect. The Federation formally requests expanded human military involvement in all sectors. Admiral Morrison, what would Earth require to increase our operations against the Zirathi? Morrison exchanged glances with Weber's transmission before responding. Complete operational authority for human commanders in designated combat zones. No Federation oversight of our tactical decisions. And formal recognition that Earth's military doctrine, while primitive by your technological standards, has proven more effective against this enemy than any of your advanced weapon systems. The vote was unanimous. Every species that had once laughed at human capabilities now formally acknowledged that Earth's primitive approach was their only hope for survival. As the session ended, Ambassador Zek Thol approached Morrison privately. The proud hegemony representative, whose people had mastered space travel before humans discovered agriculture, spoke with genuine humility. Admiral, I owe your entire species a formal apology. We dismissed your capabilities because we measured them against our own technology rather than their actual effectiveness. Morrison smiled, remembering the laughter and mockery Earth had faced in this same hall months earlier. Ambassador, you made the same mistake the Zirathi made. You assumed that more advanced automatically meant more effective. Sometimes the best weapon against a sophisticated enemy is simple, chaotic, human unpredictability. Over the following months, human forces expanded their operations throughout Federation space. What had begun as desperate last resort missions became the Federation's primary military strategy. Human commanders took charge of entire sectors, leading combined forces that included both Earth soldiers and alien support units. The transformation was remarkable. Federation species that had relied on computer-controlled tactics for millennia began learning human approaches to warfare. They discovered that sometimes the most effective solution was not the most technologically advanced one, but the most creative and unpredictable. 3 months after the assembly session, the last Zirathi bioship fled Federation space. The creatures, hive mind, fractured by countless encounters with enemies it could never understand or predict, finally abandoned its conquest entirely. The collective consciousness that had dominated dozens of star systems retreated to unknown regions of space, seeking enemies it could actually comprehend. In the aftermath of victory, the Galactic Federation underwent fundamental changes. The species that had once competed to build the most advanced technology now focused on developing flexibility and adaptability. Military academies throughout the galaxy began teaching courses on human tactical philosophy and creative problem-solving. In the halls of Federation headquarters, a new motto was inscribed in hundreds of alien languages. When facing the impossible, call the humans. They will find a way. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most primitive solution is actually the most effective one. And Earth, the newest and supposedly weakest member of the Federation, had become its savior through nothing more than human stubbornness, creativity, and the ancient art of controlled chaos. The species that had laughed at chemical rockets and metal, bullets now understood that the most powerful weapon in the universe was not advanced technology, but the unpredictable human spirit.